I was thinking about something earlier, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to kind of take a look at because I got to thinking over the last since 2013-14 when we got the current division alignment. I kept thinking, what division has represented each conference in the Stanley Cup the most? Because I kept thinking, the Atlantic Division has been pretty successful in the playoffs over the last number of years, which to me bodes well for whoever comes out of the Toronto-Florida series. The chances of the winner of that series representing the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Final is pretty high. But I wanted to take a look at what divisions have been the most successful. Now this is since 2013-2014, because the 2012-13 season was the last season of the 6-division alignment that we had. Now, I think at some point when, and I do say when, the NHL expands again, that especially if they go to 34 and potentially 36 teams, that the 6-division alignment might become a thing again. But I wanted to take a look. Since the current alignment in 2013-14, what divisions have had the most finals, the most final appearances? So I wanted to look at each of the teams that made the finals since 2014 and figure out what division did they represent. So in 2014, the LA Kings came out of the Pacific Division. They ended up winning the Stanley Cup, of course. The very next year, in 2015, it was the Chicago Blackhawks. So one Pacific team, one Central team. 2016, we go back to the Pacific Division, and it was the San Jose Sharks. So that's 2 Pacific Division teams. Then in 2017, we go back to the Central Division, and the Nashville Predators represent the Western Conference in the Stanley Cup Final. And then in 2018, we go back to the Pacific Division. It's the Vegas Golden Knights. Then in 2019, back to the Central again, the St. Louis Blues. So it's literally like up until that point, it's basically every even year it's the Pacific Division, and every odd year was the Central. Up until 2020. 2020, of course, we have the pause and everything with the world going completely stupid, and you had the pause and the bubble playoffs, which were an absolutely unmitigated disaster. But we got a playoff done, and the Dallas Stars from the Central Division end up in the finals. They make the finals in 2020, so that kind of breaks up the that whole thing. Well, then 2021 was a little odd, because it was the one year they redid everything. So 2021, you technically, we're doing the West right now, so we'll get back to 2021 here. We'll get back to 2021 here in a couple minutes. But we skip ahead to 2022, and the Central Division again ends up coming out of the Western Conference, and that, of course, was Colorado. Then in 2023, it is Vegas from the Pacific Division, and 2024, just last year, was the Edmonton Oilers. So you had alternating years here, and then here and here. So yeah, Pacific Central to Pacific Central, up until that point. And then, of course, you had back-to-back Central Division teams in the final in 2019 and 2020. And then, of course, you had the Central again getting back there in 2022. And then the last 2 years has been the Pacific Division in the Stanley Cup Final. So again, with that little thing, the chance of either Vegas or Edmonton coming out of the Western Conference, after especially the last couple of years, pretty high. So we move on. So basically, what you ended up having, you had 5 teams from the Pacific were represented and 5 from the Central. Now, technically, if you want to be technical, you're talking teams. You had 4 teams represent the Pacific Division because Vegas went to the finals twice. And then, of course, the Central, you had 5 specific teams. But 5 from each. 5 different times you had the Pacific. You had 5 from the Pacific, 5 from the Central. And yes, that does count Vegas twice because Vegas did go to the finals in 2018 and then in 2023. So we move over to the Eastern Conference. Now this is interesting because in 2014, the New York Rangers represent the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Final from the Metropolitan Division. This is with the new names and everything. Then in 2015, it's the Tampa Bay Lightning from the Atlantic Division. So, you get flip-flop there, 14 from 2014, the Rangers from the Metro, 2015, the Lightning from the Atlantic, and then 2016 and 2017, you get the Pittsburgh Penguins, both from the Metropolitan Division, winning back-to-back Stanley Cups. So, so the Metro's got a little edge there. And then, 2018, another team from the Metropolitan Division, the Washington Capitals, get to the Stanley Cup Final in 2018, and of course they win the Stanley Cup. So the only team that didn't end up winning out of that was the New York Rangers. Then we get to 2019. It is the Boston Bruins from the Atlantic Division. 2020, with the bubble playoffs and everything, it is the Tampa Bay Lightning from the Atlantic Division. They win the Stanley Cup. 2021, now this is where I get with 2021. 2021 was an odd year because this was the redrawn divisions just for the 1 year because the world was still stupid in 2021 and you couldn't cross the border because everybody was so worried about that's a time that a lot of people, trust me, would want to forget. There's no ever forgetting it because, if you forget it, they'll do it again. But you couldn't cross the border. You couldn't cross the border and play games in Canada. So Canada had to have their own division. So what you ended up having was technically 2 Atlantic Division teams played for the Stanley Cup. The Montreal Canadiens won the Clarence Campbell Trophy. So an Eastern Conference team wins the trophy from the Western Conference. But because it was that 1 year, it was just that odd year, you had basically 2 Atlantic Division teams that played each other for the Stanley Cup. Then in 2022, we go back to normal. The divisions are back to normal. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, again, they are in the Stanley Cup Final. So the Lightning, 3 consecutive years, they end up, there we go. I put a check mark next to that. And because Tampa did not win the Stanley Cup in 2022, but they did in 2020 and 2021. The Lightning, of course, went to 3 straight Stanley Cup Final, and they've done pretty well. And then in 2023 and 2024, the Florida Panthers. The Panthers, they get to the Stanley Cup Final, and lose in 2023. Last year in 2024, they get to the finals and they win it. So, you end up having only 4 times since 2014 has a Metropolitan Division team represented the Eastern Conference. 3 teams, 4 times. All the rest are Atlantic Division teams. There has not been a Metropolitan Division team to represent the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Final since 2018, since the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup. It has been dominated by the Atlantic Division since 2018. Insane. I mean, you are talking 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight seasons. It's crazy. And the damnedest thing is 5 of these last 6 have been literally one state. One state. And I mean, even if you date back to 2015, the Tampa Bay Lightning were in the final in 2015. So I mean, you know, you had a run where basically since 2019, it's been dominated by the Atlantic Division. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, yeah, 6 times. It's crazy that it's been all, you know, since 2019, it has been dominated by the Atlantic Division. And that's why I say, whoever comes out of the Toronto, Florida Atlantic Division Final Series, chances are they're going to be the team that's going to be in the final. Because, I mean, if you look at this run that the Atlantic Division has been on, it's hard to go against it. It really is. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's been way more evened out in the Western Conference where basically, I mean, the last 2 years has been put in, you know, has been the Pacific Division. But would it shock anybody if the winner of the Central Division, whether it's Dallas or Winnipeg, ends up in the final? Which honestly, the way I'm looking at it, it's going to be Dallas again for the 3rd straight year. But that's kind of where I'm thinking that series is going to end up going, and the Dallas Stars are just on fire right now. And so it wouldn't shock me if the Central Division Dallas Stars end up in the final. But again, we've had the last 2 straight years in the Western Conference has been from the Pacific Division, and of course, since 2019. Now, mind you, these two here, Tampa Bay and Montreal, technically 2 Atlantic Division teams. They played for the Stanley Cup in 2021 because of, well, reasons, you know. But again, you know, I digress. The Stanley Cup, the Prince of Wales Trophy, has basically been dominated by the Atlantic Division ever since 2019. Now, does that change this year? I don't know. We will have to find out. Again, we have Toronto and Florida, which, by the way, Florida has evened that series up at 2 apiece. And then Washington, Carolina, that is the Metro Division Final. Carolina leads that series 2-1. So, yeah, who knows? You know, will the Atlantic Division continue their dominance in the Eastern Conference? Or will we finally see a Metropolitan Division team finally break through and win that Prince of Wales Trophy and represent the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Final? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. And, you know, did anybody really realize that it's been that way? That the last Metropolitan Division team to represent the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Final, it hasn't been since 2018. That the last team to represent the East from the Metro was the Washington Capitals in 2018. Did a lot of people really know that? I didn't really realize it until I just kind of thought about it and was like, I should do a video on that. Just because I thought it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting thing to look at, to kind of show what division has been best. And oddly enough, when you look at these, out of all of these Atlantic Division teams, only the two Florida teams have ended up winning the Stanley Cup. Boston did not win the Stanley Cup. Montreal, of course, didn't win the Stanley Cup because they played Tampa. And then Florida in 23, they came up. They ended up coming short, but they ended up getting the job done in 24. So, but again, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I thought it was something interesting to look at. And did any of you guys really ever think about stuff like how basically one division has had one division really dominated the conference to represent the conference in the Stanley Cup Final? Like I said, it was one thing I didn't really think about until I just kind of started thinking, like, I wonder, because I just kept thinking how the Atlantic Division has been the dominant conference, has been the best conference in the National Hockey League. And so I thought I would just take a look at it from the start of the current alignment up until just this past year. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Hit that like button, smash that like button. That would be absolutely fantastic. Hit that subscribe button too. That would be amazing. I would love you forever if you did that. Also, share this video. Share the video with everyone that you know, with your friends, family, whoever. And if there are people out there that love hockey like you might, or like I do, let them know about the channel. Tell them about the channel, because I would love to have every hockey fan in the world. I would love to have you all join me here at Larry's House of Hockey, and also too, hit that little notification bell that will notify you anytime future videos of mine are uploaded. And yeah, it was interesting, because I was trying to think, how far back do I want to look? And I just thought, well, let me just go back as far as the current division alignment is. And of course, that started in 2013-14, so that's as far back as I went from the current alignment. So again, let me know what you guys think, and which division do you think represents each conference in the Stanley Cup Final this year? Is it going to be a team from the Central? Is it going to be a team from the Central? Is it going to be a team from the Pacific representing the West? And out East, is it going to be a Metropolitan Division team? Or is it going to be an Atlantic Division team again? Let me know, though, in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, share. I will see you guys later.